The first thing everyone noticed was the silence. Not the calm kind. The kind that settles in a room when machines are still running, but the person they are meant to protect is no longer responding. She was a middle-aged woman, a cardiac patient, someone who had lived long enough to know hospitals well, but not long enough to feel at home in one. The monitors had been steady only minutes before. Then the numbers slipped. Then they vanished. Hands moved quickly, voices shortened. A body that had weight a moment ago became something else, something urgent. In the intensive care unit, time stopped behaving normally. Minutes stretched, seconds folded in on themselves. At some point during that window, no one can say exactly when, her heart stopped. Not metaphorically, not almost. It stopped. Later, doctors would describe it in clinical terms: cardiac arrest, loss of measurable brain activity, a situation that rarely leaves room for memory. But what happened next did not remain inside the room. When she returned, when the rhythm came back and her eyes eventually opened, she did not begin with confusion. She began with a detail, not about pain, not about fear, not about a tunnel or a light. She spoke about the hospital. Specifically, she mentioned something that was not in the room, not in the hallway, not anywhere a patient in deep cardiac arrest should be able to perceive. She described an object, small, ordinary, easy to dismiss. And she said it was on the roof. At first, the words passed through the room without resistance. Patients say many things when they wake: fragments, images, residual dreams. But she was precise. She did not hesitate. She did not revise her description. She did not ask if she was right. She stated where it was and what it looked like. Above them, outside, on a part of the hospital no patient ever sees. The room stayed quiet again. A different kind of silence this time. Because if what she was saying was even partially accurate, the explanation would not be immediate. And the roof had not been checked yet. She did not speak immediately after waking. There was a period, short but noticeable, where her eyes followed the room as if she were orienting herself to something familiar that no longer felt entirely solid. The ceiling first, then the lights, then the faces. Her breathing was shallow. Her voice, when it came, was calm in a way that surprised the staff. She asked where she was. Someone answered. She nodded. Then she said something else. She said she had been above the building, not floating, not drifting. Above, she described the hospital as a whole before she mentioned herself. The shape of it, the height, the separation between sections. Her words did not rush. They arrived in sequence, as if she were recalling a route she had taken many times before. She said she had seen the roof. At first, no one corrected her. There was no reason to. Patients speak metaphorically all the time. But, she continued, she said there was something on the roof that didn't belong there, something that had likely been dropped, something small enough to ignore unless you were looking directly at it. She named it, not vaguely, not approximately. She described its color, its position relative to the edge, what part of it was worn. A nurse smiled politely and glanced at the chart. Another adjusted a line. The conversation could have ended there, but she wasn't finished. She said she had been aware of the room while being elsewhere, that the voices sounded distant, not muffled, but flattened, as if heard through a wall. She remembered someone saying her name. She remembered pressure on her chest. She did not remember pain. No one interrupted her. What she remembered most clearly was the moment of separation. Not a dramatic moment, a quiet one, a sense of being released from urgency. She spoke about looking down without fear, about recognizing the building not as a place she was trapped in, but as a structure with boundaries she could move beyond. When asked how long she thought she had been gone, she did not guess. She said time had not felt present, only sequence. One thing, then another. Back in the room, the staff exchanged looks that did not last long enough to be recorded, but long enough to register. Her vitals stabilized. Her speech remained clear. She repeated the detail about the roof once more, unprompted. Same description, same certainty, no elaboration. And then, as if the matter were settled, she closed her eyes. The story did not grow larger in that moment. It became heavier. The roof was not checked immediately. Hospitals are structured environments. Access is controlled. Movement upward is logged, keyed, and justified. There was no protocol for verifying a patient's description of a rooftop. The idea lingered instead, passed quietly between staff members during shift changes. Not as belief, as curiosity. One nurse mentioned it to another. A resident overheard. A note was added to the chart, not about the roof, but about the patient's clarity and coherence. She was not disoriented. She was not agitated. She did not repeat herself compulsively. When asked to describe the object again, she did so without prompting. Same placement, same orientation, same detail. Later that day, during a routine facilities check unrelated to her case, a maintenance worker accessed the upper level of the building. The roof was flat. Bare concrete, mostly empty. Near the edge, exactly where she had indicated, there was something out of place. It was small, weathered, and it did not belong to the hospital. The worker noticed it because it did not belong there, not because he was looking for it. The item matched her description. No one announced this immediately. There was no moment of revelation. The information traveled slowly, through conversation rather than report. A nurse asked a question. Someone answered without emphasis. Another person paused longer than necessary. When the patient was told, she did not react. No satisfaction, no relief. She simply nodded, as if confirmation were expected. The chart now included additional notes, timestamps, names, the duration of cardiac arrest, the absence of recorded brain activity, the timeline of resuscitation. None of it explained the roof. Access logs showed no unauthorized entry. Security footage did not show her leaving the unit. The roof was not visible from any patient window. There were witnesses to the resuscitation. There were witnesses to her condition before and after. No one could place her anywhere except the bed. And yet, the object had been there, not newly placed, not disturbed. As the case moved quietly from one professional to another, something shifted, not toward explanation, toward restraint. Because the more ordinary the records appeared, the less ordinary the detail on the roof became. And that was the point where the story stopped being only hers. Cases like this do not enter research as stories. They arrive as fragments, a medical chart, a timestamp, a note in the margin that was never meant to matter. Across hospitals and decades, there are records that follow a similar pattern. Cardiac arrest, loss of measurable consciousness, reports of awareness that do not fit the room. Most are dismissed before they are named. Some are archived without comment. A few remain, not because they are explained, but because they resist being erased. Researchers who study these events tend to agree on very little. Definitions shift, criteria tighten and loosen. What remains consistent is the problem of timing. Experiences are reported during periods when the brain should not be constructing memory. Perception is described when sensory input should be absent. Details are recalled that cannot be traced to prior knowledge. In this case, the detail was not symbolic, not interpretive, not internal. It was spatial, an object on a roof. The hospital did not change its protocols. The staff did not issue statements. The case was not publicized. It remained what it had always been, a record that sat quietly between medicine and something medicine has not yet mapped. Some try to close the gap. Residual awareness, fragmented perception, coincidence refined by memory. They explain parts. They do not touch the roof. Others argue that consciousness may not be produced entirely by the brain, but filtered by it. That under certain conditions, the filter weakens. This idea does not resolve the case either. It only creates space around it. The woman recovered. She did not become a spokesperson. She did not revise her account over time. She did not add meaning to it. When asked years later what she believed had happened, she did not answer directly. She said only that the hospital felt larger than she had remembered, and that some places, once seen from the outside, never looked the same again. The roof remains part of the building. The object is no longer there. The records remain, and the question stays open, not as a demand for belief, but as a pause, because something was known at a moment when knowing should not have been possible. And whatever crossed that distance left no explanation behind.